Agent vital signs, 0.
So, nobody wants to be playing through a heroic mission, fighting your way through waves of enemies, just to get flanked by a small remote control car strapped with enough C4 to take out a small country. Okay, that might be an over-exaggeration, but we've all been there and it's never a good time. Hey folks, I'm Abrax and welcome back to another Division 2 video. In this one, I'm going to go over 5 tips to help out new and solo players with heroic difficulty content. Let's jump into it. First off, I must say this is a video for new, returning, or solo players who've been struggling to break away from challenging difficulty content and step into heroic. If you already have a ton of time in game, you've been playing heroics, legendaries, raids, there's a good chance you already know everything I'm about to go over. But if you are new or solo, stick around, I hope there is something in this video that can help you out. Also, if you're new to the channel, hello, if not, welcome back, and if you enjoyed this video or find it helpful, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and ring the little bell so you don't miss any future content. With that, let's get into the video. The first tip I have to help you out with heroic difficulty content is just to keep your distance. This is something I've mentioned in a previous video, but the AI used for enemy factions in the Division 2 is actually pretty smart up close. But it is as dumb as a bag of rocks at range. If you get too close, each faction will act slightly differently, but they all try their best to move around you, flank you, rush, and put pressure on you, and it can put you in some difficult situations. But if you stay back, keep your distance, they are significantly easier to handle. This also gives you more time to react when you see NPCs approaching or trying to flank, letting you keep more control over what's happening. Also, as a side note on keeping your distance, don't be afraid to move back a little if the NPCs start moving up and applying pressure. It's much better to move back into a better position or kite the enemies into the last room than go down and have to completely restart the mission or have to fast travel all the way back to the control point. For the second tip, make sure you're prioritizing the order in which you take out the enemy NPCs. This can make a big difference to how the encounter goes. Which enemies you target first can vary from faction to faction, but there are a few archetypes that no matter who you are fighting, you should be prioritizing. These include the rushers that will chase you out of cover and generally just be a pain, medics that can buff or resurrect down enemies, and controllers. I hate controllers. These are like rapid fire rushers with exploding cars and drones. Snipers can also do massive damage with a single shot and are made much more lethal when combined with rushers or controllers. The order you take these out, like I said, can vary from faction to faction, but keep these archetypes in mind whenever you enter a room in a mission or attack a control point. For the third tip, make sure you're optimizing your builds. Now, I don't necessarily mean make sure you're using the optimization station, although that does help, but make sure all of the pieces of your build are working towards the same purpose. If you're making a damage build, make sure you're using brands that lean towards damage like Providence, Cheska or Grupo, and make sure all of your attributes are helping you increase your damage whether you're going for a crit or headshot build. Same with skill, tank or hybrid builds. This will make sure you're getting the best out of your gear, weapons and skills. If you want to go a step further, start farming hard or challenging missions for gear pieces or weapons you want to start using with higher attribute rolls to help squeeze the most out of your build. Then, use the optimization station as the cherry on top just to max everything out. I'll actually link a few videos in the description that might help you out, including a few build videos that I use for farming, as well as a breakdown of putting a build together from scratch. Number 4 is something some players do instinctively, but it is also something I see a lot of players overlooking, and that's to use the environment. What do I mean by this? Well, there are a few ways you can use the environment of missions and control points to your advantage. The first and most obvious thing is to use any barrels, fuel tanks, and other environmental objects that you can shoot for an effect. These can stagger, damage, or set fire to NPCs, all things that give you the advantage. But these aren't just dotted around the area. Most enemy types have a red weak point on their person that you can pop for an explosion or status effect, which if you time correctly can be extremely useful in quite a few situations. A little less obvious is aggroing or getting the attention of the enemies, moving back and using doorways and corridors as choke points to funnel the NPCs down, lining them up and making them much easier to handle. Or if you need to take cover, make sure you're taking cover in places that completely cover you from one side, limiting the ways the enemies can flank, making their movements a little easier to follow and predict. These are just small changes to the way you think when you start an encounter, but hitting a few weak points, choosing the right cover, and using the level layout to your advantage can make the difference between a good time and a bad time. And finally, for number 5, if you haven't already, give a skill build a try. A lot of players look to skill builds for heroic or harder solo content because you can get great results with a slightly more passive playstyle depending on how you put the build together. Skill builds are very powerful in PvE, putting out a ton of damage while keeping you much more out of harm's way than say an all guns blazing kind of build. If you'd like to try a skill build, I did recently put out a full build guide that gives you a solid base and a few alternative talents you can give a try. But if you are just starting out with heroic missions and control points, I would recommend going for kinetic momentum as a chest talent over glass cannon, and consider taking a little armor regen over skill haste, just to add a little self-healing to the build. And that is everything for this video. If you have any tips for new or solo players just getting into heroic content, leave them in the comments below. Let's help each other out. Also, let me know if you found this video helpful by giving it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more content. You'll find more Division 2 videos, the link to my Twitter and Patreon in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.